choose me over your mother and come to the family gathering right now." His angry voice echoed through the quiet funeral hall. Everyone looked at me in shock. "Please, Kevin, just let me stay for my mother's funeral," I pleaded. "I don't care. Get here now. If you're not here in an hour, I'll divorce you." Divorce was something I would accept, but I didn't want to add to my father's grief over losing his wife. 1 hour, that's it. The call abruptly ended, leaving me holding my head in frustration. My father spoke up, his body trembling. "Why did he talk like that? Has he always treated you this way?" "That's right. Dad always acts high and mighty towards Mom," Emma interjected, speaking up for me. Hearing this, my father's expression turned from anger to cold. "Well, then let's give him what he wants," he said, gritting his teeth. "My name is Sasha, and I'm a 48-year-old homemaker. I live with my husband, Kevin, just the two of us. I met him back when we were students." "Hey, I like you, Sasha. Will you go out with me?" He confessed his feelings to me when we were high school classmates, and that's when we started dating. We continued our relationship through college, and when we became working adults, we decided to get married. "I'll cherish you forever, Sasha. Will you marry me?" Kevin proposed to me like that. Then, at his urging, I decided to become a housewife instead of getting a job. I didn't mind because I love doing housework and don't have any particular hobbies, so I don't even spend much money. Kevin always looked very happy. "Sasha, you're such an ideal wife," he would say. Just hearing that made me very happy. Soon after, I got pregnant with our daughter, Emma. Both Kevin and I, as well as our parents, were overjoyed. "Mom, let me do it for you," my daughter Emma would often say. She grew up to be a kind child who would follow me around, trying to help. Gradually, her kindness extended beyond me to others as well. If she saw someone in trouble, she would help them without any second thought. She had a strong sense of justice, too. "You were such a tomboy back then," I used to tell her. "I do remember. Sorry for causing so much trouble," she replied with a chuckle. My lovely daughter Emma grew up and left home after getting married. Since then, it's just been Kevin and me. One day, while I was cleaning as usual, the bell rang. "Oh God, here we go again," I mumbled. Checking the monitor, and, as I expected, it was Kevin's mother, Sarah, standing in front of the Ma Inn door. I sighed as I opened the door. "Why does it take you so long to open the door? You're slow," Sarah complained as soon as the door opened and walked in. She rushed into the living room, turned on the TV, and asked for coffee. I let out a deep sigh again at the sight. I've always been troubled by Sarah's unannounced visits. "You still suck at cleaning and doing laundry, huh? You're absolutely a useless daughter-in-law," she always complained about my housekeeping. "This has been going on for years. Sar dotes on Kevin and sees me, her daughter-in-law, as an enemy. That's why she constantly criticizes me. Maybe it's because you can only give birth to daughters," Sarah often said. She was not pleased that I'd only had Emma. "It's such a disgrace not to have a male heir," she would mock me, even though there wasn't anything specific to inherit. I suffer from secondary infertility. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't have another child. Sarah nags about this constantly. I always listen to her snide remarks in silence. Back then, I used to argue back, but she'd just yell and throw things at me. So I started keeping quiet. Honestly, I don't even want her presence in the house. However, if I didn't open the door, she'd ring the intercom repeatedly and start shouting. I felt bad for the neighbors and eventually let her in. "You got married into this family. You have to obey us," she'd insist. Sarah stays for hours and hours before she finally leaves. When she goes, I sigh with relief, only to make eye contact with a neighbor through the front door. "Isn't that Kevin's mother? Are you all right?" one neighbor asked, concerned. Ah, yes, I'm fine. I apologize for the noise. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Kind neighbors sometimes listen to my complaints or visit. When Sarah is here to help me out, she cares about her appearance, so she doesn't harass me when others are around. If you need anything, just let me know, one neighbor said. This house was built on land that belonged to my grandfather, and my father built the house. If you try to make a copy of the key without permission, I'll kick you out, my father had told Kevin and Sarah. My father owns this house, and he made it clear to Kevin that his parents can't have a key. With the support of my neighbors and parents, I managed to maintain some peace of mind. I really wish Kevin would take my side. When Sarah came over again, I felt frustrated. Can your mother please inform us before coming to our house? She always complains about my housekeeping. Can you please tell her to stop? Kevin made a face. You are starting again. Why? Mom's doing it for you. If you can't get along, it's because you're not trying hard enough. Just get used to it. He never takes my side. Being doted on by Sarah, Kevin has some outdated ideas. He believes that as the husband, he and his family come first, and the wife should do all the housekeeping and childcare. He is such an old-minded person. It's all your fault. No need to drag me into your problems. He would say it every time. Kevin doesn't listen to me. Seeing him storm off to his room, I sighed again. Hey, Mom, can I come over sometime? One day I got a call from Emma. Of course, dear, I replied. The next day, Emma came over. Why did you come over on a weekday? Your dad is at work. I didn't come to see Dad. I came to see you. Emma isn't very close to Kevin. On the other hand, Kevin dotes on Emma, but she always seems annoyed by it. It was you who took care of me. Besides, I can't like people who bully my mom. Emma has always cared about me. So, what brings you here today? I gestured for her to sit. Mom, have you thought about divorcing Dad? I froze at Emma's words. Seeing my reaction, Emma started to speak. You don't say about your feelings because you don't want to trouble Grandpa and Grandma, right? She was right. At first, I thought about consulting my parents. However, my mother has a chronic illness and has been in and out of the hospital for years, so I hesitated to bring it up with them. Now both my husband and I are earning enough, and we can support you. You can get a divorce from Dad and live with us. Her words made me pause and think. Certainly there was Sarah, who enjoyed criticizing me, and her husband Carl, who acted like he wasn't even there. Then there was my husband, who never helped me and for whom I had lost feelings. I wanted to be free from them. Are you sure? Won't it be a burden for you? It'll be fine, Mom. Let's live together, Emma said with a smile. Her words made me feel relieved. However, I knew I couldn't get a divorce yet. I decided to take my time and prepare for it. But those plans were suddenly disrupted. What? Mom is hospitalized? My mother had to be hospitalized again. This time it was serious. Hearing my father's distressed voice, I requested Kevin. I need to go to my parents' house. You are not going anywhere. If you go, who's going to do all the housework? But my mother's condition is serious, I pleaded. No, you're my wife now, so obey your husband. Kevin was against me going back to my parents' house. Ever since I got married, I could only visit my parents once a year, and that was possible only because Emma begged to go see my family. As I was thinking of what to do, I got a call from Emma. I heard about Grandma. Yes, but... I know. I'll talk to Dad. Emma seemed to understand without me having to say everything. I handed my phone to Kevin without hesitation. He first looked suspicious, but then his expression changed to a smile when he realized it was Emma. If Emma's asking, I guess you can go. After talking to Emma, Kevin reluctantly gave his permission. I quickly packed and got into Emma's car when she came to pick me up. Heading to your parents' house for the first time in a while makes Dad so mad, Emma said angrily while driving. I sighed. I couldn't stop worrying about my parents. Mom, you might not want to think about this now, but you should seriously consider the future. I nodded at her words. Even though my mother was in danger, Kevin was only thinking about himself. I didn't want to live with him anymore. I resolved to go through with the divorce. When we rushed to the hospital, my mother was already unconscious, and my father looked completely exhausted by her side. Oh, Sasha and Emma, you're here, Dad said weakly. I knew this would come eventually, I thought. My poor father had always been concerned about me. Seeing him so tired, I regretted not coming sooner. I'll stay here for a while, Dad. I've taken some time off work. I'll do whatever I can, Grandpa, Emma assured. Thank you both. After that, I spent my days taking care of my mom and supporting my dad. Even though my mother was unconscious, all I could do was talk to her and encourage my father. Then the unexpected moment came. When are you going to come back? I got a message from Kevin. Checking my notifications, I saw several messages. Sarah was doing the housework while I was away. There's a family dinner soon, so come back, Kevin wrote. My mom is critically ill, so I can't come, I replied. Kevin called me immediately. What is this? First, are you abandoning your duties as a wife, and now you're refusing to attend the family gathering? This is ridiculous. I'm not kidding. What is this gathering about? One of his relatives was getting married and they were gathering to celebrate, but it was a relative whose name I didn't even recognize. I can't leave my parents to go back for a pathetic family dinner. I can't. I want to stay with my parents. No, that's an order, Kevin said and hung up immediately. I sighed deeply. Mom? Grandma? Emma came rushing in. That day my mother passed away. Soon after, her funeral was held. Despite her illness, my mother was kind and knowledgeable. She was loved by many, and not only our relatives but also many others came to pay their respects. Dad didn't come, did he? Emma asked, disappointed. No, he didn't. I had informed Kevin about the funeral, but he ignored my message. As the funeral proceeded quietly, my phone rang. It was a call from my husband. Normally, I would have stepped outside to take the call, but seeing who it was, I guessed Kevin had specifically called me. As I thought of what to do, Emma, sitting beside me, seemed to have an idea and gave me instructions. Put it on speaker, she said. Hearing that, I knew what Emma had in mind. She likely wanted to expose Kevin's behavior to everyone present. So I deliberately answered the call on speaker in front of everyone. Hey, I'm at a funeral right now, I said. Why? All the other relatives are gathered here, he yelled, and I instinctively fell silent. People around me looked curiously, but when I put my finger to my lips, they seemed to understand, and the room fell silent. Family gathering is today. Come home quick and help Mom. It's not possible. It's my mother's funeral. I'm your husband, so listen to me only. Get to the family gathering now. His angry voice echoed through the quiet funeral hall. Everyone looked irritated at Kevin's incredibly selfish remarks. Do what I say or else, Kevin had insisted before abruptly ending the call. As I held my head in frustration, my father's angry voice broke the silence. Has he always been like this? Emma, always ready to defend me, spoke up. Yes, Grandpa. He's always acted high and mighty. My father's expression turned from anger to a stony calm resolve. I see. Then let's give him what he wants, he said coldly. An hour later, still dressed in our funeral attire, my relatives and I arrived together at Kevin's home. You're late, Sarah exclaimed with an angry expression as she opened the door. However, upon seeing everyone gathered behind me, her body stiffened in shock. Ignoring her, we all entered. As we moved toward the loud noise, I saw men laughing crudely, likely drinking. Meanwhile, the women, upon seeing us, stepped aside in silence, their expressions surprised. "Wow, that's quite a gathering. Sorry to keep you waiting," I said firmly as I faced Kevin's family. "We're late. I was called away urgently even though it was during my mother's funeral," I said bitterly. "We decided to come because there was something far more important than my wife's funeral," my dad said. Everyone who had been lively moments ago was now quiet to see us all dressed in somber suits. "What's with the outfits? And why are you not alone, Sasha?" Sarah demanded with an angry expression as she stepped forward. Kevin turned around abruptly at the sound of my dad's voice and froze. His expression matched Sarah's, filled with shock and discomfort. "Will you tell us why you called Sasha away? What right did you have to take her from the important moment of saying her final goodbye to her mother?" My father, who had been quiet, now exerted a subtle yet palpable pressure on the room. "She is my wife," Kevin started defensively, but my father interjected firmly. "Being a wife doesn't mean she is responsible for all the housework and childcare. You allow your mother to harass her, and don't even let her visit her own parents' home. Is that what you think a wife is?" Kevin attempted to speak, but under my father's unwavering gaze, he eventually fell silent. "What do you think my daughter is to you?" My father thundered at Kevin. He flinched and stayed quiet. "Stop it! You're scaring my son!" Sarah yelled, rushing to Kevin's side and glared at my father. He returned her gaze coldly. "It's only natural for a wife to obey her husband's family. What era do you think you're living in?" Sarah challenged, her voice laced with arrogance. My father's anger was at its peak. "Human rights are defined by law, and your statement is not valid to the laws. Are you aware of that?" he countered, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. Sarah was taken aback by my father's comment. His rare display of anger brought me some relief, though I kept my gaze fixed on Kevin, not showing any sign of it. "All right, then I will not come home either," Emma spoke up, standing firmly next to my father. "You tell me to come home now and then, but Mom doesn't. Mom visit her parents. Why's that? You should have come to Grandma's funeral, Dad. Instead, you're here laughing with your relatives. I've hated that about you since I was a kid." Kevin looked shocked at Emma's words. He wasn't expecting that Emma harbored such strong feelings towards him. As my relatives started chiming in, calling him cruel and the worst family member, even about half of his relatives began to look at his family with disgust. "No way my daughter hates me," Kevin exclaimed, trying to compose himself, though Sarah's words had already thrown him into a panic. Seeing this, we left the house after sending my mother off peacefully. I returned to the house one last time to pack my belongings. "Are you sure you want me to come with you?" I asked Emma. "Of course," she replied firmly. I decided to divorce Kevin and live with my father. Just as I finished packing, Kevin barged in. Behind him was Sarah. Carl was absent as usual. "Right on time. Here, sign this," I said, handing him the completed divorce papers. Seeing them, he turned pale and began to apologize. "Don't leave Sasha. Please reconsider," Kevin pleaded. "No, I have enough of you," I replied firmly. "Wait, Sasha. We'll forgive you for everything, so you should forgive him too," Sarah interjected. Something snapped inside me at her words. "Who do you think you are to forgive anyone, huh? I don't need your forgiveness for anything," I yelled suddenly, ignoring her shocked reaction. I began to let out everything I had been holding in. Despite continuously asking her to call ahead, she always showed up unannounced, which irritated me. Her complaints about my housekeeping made me uncomfortable. Whenever I visited her house, she treated me like a maid and made me do all the work. I let out all of my frustration on her and her son. Why do I even need your forgiveness? If anything, you should be the ones apologizing. You should be saying sorry for staying at our house for hours without notice, complaining about everything, and treating me like a damn maid. Sarah fell silent at my words. My father stood beside me, glaring at both. "Kevin, I can't leave my precious daughter in your care any longer. Get out of this house." "What?" Kevin was taken aback. "The house is in my name, so you need to leave," my father shouted. Kevin turned pale, perhaps having forgotten this fact. "Get out now," my father ordered Kevin and Sarah, his voice unwavering. "Sign the divorce papers before leaving," I said. "Wait, Sasha, please think again." He pleaded, hope flickering in his eyes when I hesitated, but my decision was firm. "Finally," I said calmly, as Kevin signed the divorce papers with a defeated expression. "I'm so glad the divorce is finalized," my father smiled, sharing a moment of relief with me. Outside, we heard the commotion and looked out the window to see what was happening. "Why did Dad leave us behind?" I muttered, watching as Carl's car drove away. It seemed he had left while Kevin and Sra were arguing with us. Shortly after, the police arrived, called by our neighbors due to the noises caused by Kevin and Sarah. "Finally some peace," I remarked quietly as I watched them being taken away by the police. After everything quieted down, I gathered my belongings and returned to my parents' house. As I settled in, I checked my phone and found a message from Carl. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you," the message read. Carl had left early to let the women in John's family escape. Some of them had stayed behind at Kevin's house for cleaning. It turned out Carl had been marginalized in the household due to his wife's schemes, and this time he had taken his revenge on her. I might have misunderstood. "It's true. Carl didn't protect you when he could, so don't feel sorry for him. Instead, let's be glad we're free of that family," my father assured me. I nodded in agreement with his words. It seemed Kevin and Sarah were now facing a difficult situation. Since the women had successfully escaped, their husbands were holding a grudge against Kevin and Sarah. Carl divorced Sarah, and the two of them were shunned by all their relatives. Carl had kicked them out of the house, forcing them to move into a cheap apartment. "It's going to be tough for them from now on," my father remarked quietly. "What have you done, Dad?" I asked, curious about the extent of my father's actions. "I took a significant portion of Kevin's savings through property division for emotional abuse," my father admitted. "Plus, I also informed his company about his behavior." My father continued. "Kevin had old-fashioned thinking in the worst way. He would forcibly bring his subordinates to the house. One of these subordinates had given me their contact information in case I ever needed help," I explained further. "I enlisted their help this time, and as a result, Kevin was in a very uncomfortable position at work. And that's not all," my father added gravely. "It turned out he had been emotionally abusing his subordinates as well. When they learned about our divorce, they came forward with evidence and sued him. Yes, it seems Kevin's life took a significant downturn. After losing his job and facing legal consequences for his behavior at work, he ended up having to work multiple part-time jobs just to make ends meet. Sarah, who had never worked outside the home, relied solely on Kevin's earnings, adding to his financial stress. According to reports from a subordinate who saw him in town, Kevin appeared lousy and frustrated, even getting into trouble with the police after kicking a trash can. He's going down for good." Meanwhile, Emma shared the joyful news of her pregnancy at my parents' house. Seeing her lovingly pat her belly, I felt relieved that I had finalized the divorce before this new chapter began. Emma's husband was also there, enjoying the company of my father. As the excitement about the unborn grandchild grew, my father eagerly brought out drinks, although I knew I'd need to stop him soon to prevent overindulgence. Kevin and Sarah, with their selfish actions and mistreatment, won't have the privilege of seeing their grandchild or great-grandchild. This, I believe, is the most significant punishment for them. Kevin once doted on Emma. "Mom, have you thought about marrying again?" Emma asked curiously. "Not yet. I've just been through a divorce," I replied. Emma noticed my expression and asked with a mischievous smile, "James? I think I know him." Surprised, I continued, "Well, yes, him, James. He's the subordinate who's been in touch since my divorce. Sometimes he'd apologize for waking us up in the middle of the night." I laughed. Emma looked nostalgic. "He was always considerate, especially when he visited. I used to wish James was my dad instead." "I think it's time for you to find your own happiness, Mom," Emma said earnestly. Her words left an impact on me, and I nodded in agreement. Sometime later, James invited me to dinner, and Emma and I shared a laugh. "Maybe I can find my happiness this time," I said with a smile, feeling hopeful. 1 year later. "I'm a little early, aren't I?" I mumbled to myself as I arrived ahead of time for a meeting, wondering how to pass the extra time. "Sasha," a known voice called out, causing me to turn around. It was Kevin, stumbling towards me. "It's been hard ever since you left. I realize how important you are to me." "Don't start again, please," I thought to myself. "Can't do anything about it now," I replied coldly, keeping my distance from him. "And I heard that Emma had a baby." I felt a hint of anger bubbling up, wondering how this news had reached him. "Emma is currently busy taking care of her baby. I won't let you disrupt her life." "But what if you and I get back together?" he pressed. "Don't say the impossible," I stated firmly. Suddenly, someone put an arm around my shoulder. I looked up to see James, glaring at Kevin. "You," Kevin started, recognizing James as my former subordinate. "Don't even try." James stopped him. "I'm no longer your subordinate. Me and Sasha are in a relationship now." Kevin's face fell into despair upon hearing James's words. A year ago, when James invited me to dinner, we clicked immediately. He confessed his long-harbored feelings for me, and we started dating. "This can't be true," Kevin mumbled. "I will make Sasha happy this time, and I will cherish Emma's child as my own grandchild." James firmly declared, "You no longer needed here." With that, Kevin walked away, knowing he would never go back to how it was again. "Sasha, will you marry me?" James asked, looking a bit shy. I nodded, feeling flustered. "We're engaged now," I happily told Emma. "Wow, that's wonderful," Emma exclaimed, genuinely happy. "It has always been my and my wife's wish for our daughter to be happy," my father added, sharing in the joy. "Are you going to have a wedding?" Emma asked, wiggling her eyebrows. "We're both too old for that. Besides, it wouldn't be easy with a baby, and I don't want to trouble you and Dad," I explained gently. They looked a bit disappointed, but I smiled softly. "Instead, we're planning a trip. We'll be gone for a while." "Well, you can leave Grandpa to me then," Emma said cheerfully. "And I'll take care of the great-grandchild," my father added with a grin. I laughed with two of them gratefully. "Thanks to you both. I'm very happy now. I feel very grateful." In my words, the two of them exchanged glances. My father spoke first. "On the contrary, it's due to you that your mother and I were happy." "Absolutely. I'm who I am today because you raised me with so much love, Mom," Emma added sincerely. Shortly after, I married James. "It's like a dream having Sasha as my wife," James would often say with a smile. His expression reminded me of Kevin's when he confessed his love, but James was way different than him. Kevin always looked straight ahead, never at me. However, James looked right into my eyes. Even these small things made me smile. A few years later, my father reunited with my mother, and now I live with James. Unlike with Kevin, we talk about everything and respect each other deeply. It's a feeling I cherish. "Will Emma come today?" James asked suddenly, breaking my thoughts. "Yes, she will. Her child is going to turn 6 already. Time flies," I replied warmly. "She is the dearest to me. I always want to buy her everything." "When she calls me Grandpa, I can't help but laugh," James chuckled. "I think Emma might scold you if you buy too much," I teased gently. Well, we're on the same page. James shrugged with a grin. As we laughed together, we heard cheerful voices from the entrance. Smiling, we headed over. "Hey, Mom, Dad," Emma greeted us with a smile. Moments later, our 6-year-old grandchild jumped into James's arms, making him fall back slightly. "She resembles Emma so much. Such a tomboy," I joked Emma. Emma let out a mock, indignant sound, and we all burst out laughing. That moment, surrounded by the people I love, I thought to myself that I wanted to protect these smiles forever.